Good evening, everybody. So now we're going to continue with the book of Hanoch, chapter 82, which begins with a new um, section of the book. This is the scroll of the dreams. And it says, "And now, Methuselah, my son, I shall show you all the divisions that I have had prior to your birth. I mean, all divisions. And now, Methuselah, my son, I shall show you all the visions that I have had prior to your birth." Remember that the birth of Methuselah was key because the name given to him means, "With his death I shall send it." So it was a prophecy. The name of Methuselah was a prophecy of the flood that would come, the judgment that would come for the first time of history. So Yahweh gave the name, obviously, through his father Hanoch, as Methuselah, because his death would be a sign that the destruction of the earth would come. So also, now that Hanoch is about to tell his visions regarding the end, he tells Methuselah, for he represents pretty much the sign of the end, which connects with the fact that when the two witnesses die, then the last plagues, the 7 bowls of wrath, will happen, those of Revelation, of course. So also Methuselah was the man who lived on this earth the most. And I say on this earth because, as we know, Hanoch and Eliyahu were taken alive. And then we have obviously Yahushua HaMashiach, who was resurrected and has been living next to the Father for almost 2,000 years already, plus the years that he lived on earth. So Methuselah was from the people that we see on scriptures and the length of their lives, Methuselah was the longest. And that is to show that Yahweh is merciful and he's long suffering. So he waited and waited and waited to send the flood, so much so that the person that was the sign through his death for the flood to come was the one who lived the most, because Yahweh was giving time for people to repent. Not only that, when he died, the flood was supposed to come that same day. But being Yahweh the most merciful, he gave 7 more days of time for repentance and for mourning Methuselah. 7 days so that Noah mainly would mourn Methuselah. So once again, "And now, Methuselah, my son, I shall show you all the visions that I have had prior to your birth. I had 2 visions before getting married, one quite different to the other. The first was when I was learning to write, and the second before I took your mother." The first was when I was learning to write. So here we see that from the very beginning, people would learn to write, mainly those who were obviously interested in that. And I say that because when we read about what the angels taught men, the writing of books was mentioned. And here we have Hanoch learning to write before even getting married. So there's the writing of those, like the prophets, who actually write something for the benefit of the people, while there are those who write their opinions and propaganda and actually create confusion and bring a lot of trouble and issues to the world, as we talked about on that chapter where we read that part. So the first vision was when I was learning to write, and the second before I took your mother. I saw a terrifying vision, and upon observing it, I prayed to Yahweh. And upon observing it, people should do anytime they find, well, all throughout the day, all throughout our lives, but mainly when there is something which may scare the person or just create wonder in any way, positive or negative, one should look and pray to Yahweh so that one can discern if the vision is of the Father or not. And I say that also because scripture tells us about Lucifer, how he can appear as an angel of light. So we must be able to discern the spirits. And my point is that many people, when they get scared, they only think about running. They pass out or other things that happen because of not being able to control the emotion of fear, for instance, amongst other emotions that also can cause some issues. So instead of that, we must control ourselves through the Ruach, which gives us that willpower, so that we can focus on who has the power, which is the Almighty Creator Yahweh, for either to stop whatever may happen or to give shalom to us so that we may continue and take it. Even if it's something when you must run, then the spirit would lead you to that, but not to do it just because of fear or emotion. So, and upon observing it, I prayed to Yahweh. I was lying down in the house of my grandfather, Mahalalel, which also was a prophetic name, because it had to do with the destruction that would come from the Almighty through the flood, in which men would be, humanity pretty much, except for Noah, would be dissolved through the water. So, and I saw in a vision how the sky collapsed. This is super important. And I saw in a vision how the sky collapsed. It was loosened and fell upon the earth. According to what we are told by the NASA and teachers who are paid to just repeat everything they are told through the textbooks that are also written and paid and edited and all of that by those who are in control. If the world was like they tell us, then this would make no sense. However, we have seen through experiments, through testimonies, certain explorations and other things, that what they tell us is not the truth. While on the other hand, we have read scriptures who were sent by the Creator, who told us how the creation is. And that is only using the scriptures, what people call the Bible, the books that are within it, accepted by most Christians. It is clear in there that the earth is not like they tell us. And there are around 400 plus verses having to do with that subject. So the point here is that it says that the sky collapsed. So there is something that fell, just like there is a roof in a house. Yahweh made a roof for this house of humanity, which is the earth. And that is what the book of Genesis calls the firmament, rakia in Hebrew, which has to do with something which is solid and is given shape through hitting it with a hammer. So it is something like a wong, pretty much, like I have mentioned in other studies, or we know, the dome, but it is a hard material. Which scripture says it is like brass. And we see it mentioned in Genesis, in the book of Ezekiel, in Revelation, many other parts, but in those three that I mentioned are key, because in Revelation, the chosen few will be standing over a sea of glass, looking at the earth, pretty much, singing a song, the song of Moshe and the Lamb. Then we have in Ezekiel, when he is shown the kabod, or the honor of the Father, which was an image of Mashiach on the throne. And as we know, the throne of Yahweh is the heavens, and his footstool is the earth. So when the throne of Yahweh was shown to Ezekiel, he was being shown the earth, and he saw the firmament, the sky, pretty much, as being a hard material, not like we are told that you can just go up and keep going up and then go to space, which is infinite, which to some now they say is like they have found the limit, so not infinite anymore. But anyways, we see that it says, and I saw in a vision how the sky collapsed, was loosened, and fell upon the earth. There is a kids, I don't remember if it was I think it was like a cartoon animation, whatever, called Chicken Little, in which he was going crazy about the sky falling. And people were telling him that he was crazy, and there was proof that it was actually falling. So they tell us even through things like that. And then when you use an example like that, just people say, oh, you're watching too much TV or seeing too many movies. But also, for instance, we have it in The Simpsons, when Homer hits a home run and then he breaks the heavens and water comes in, which are the waters that are above, as we see in the book of Genesis. So they have done it, and those are two examples of many, many others. Also, the saying, the sky is the limit, even though nowadays they use it as there is no limit, it actually means there is a limit, and that is the sky, that is the firmament. So, and I saw in a vision how the sky collapsed, was loosened, and fell upon the earth. And there's also, well, I guess I can show that. I don't know if you guys want to see the Homer one, at least, which is short. If you have seen it, not important, but I will show an image of something which I think is interesting. So I'm going to go and find it. So there is this stone that they found a while ago. So, well, yeah, the image I have is in Spanish. I'll just translate it. This is called the Skystone, and they found it in 1990. A man by the name of Angelo Pittoni, in one of his excavations, archaeological excavations in Sierra Leone, Africa, well, yeah, of the West. Then it says, the experts say that it shouldn't exist in the earth. So they don't know where it came from, but the experts say that it shouldn't exist on the earth. It contains 77% of oxygen, and it has a little bit of this other four. And it is pretty much as we find in, well, it's connected with what we see in Genesis 1, 6-8, and Psalms 19:1. It is completely blue, as you can see. And they not only found it there, they eventually started to find it in other places. So they claim it comes from somewhere else, and that somewhere else would be the sky. and that sky will be the firmament, which the scripture says that it is the color of sapphire, the stone, which is blue. So pretty much this stone looks like a sapphire, and this could be the material with which the firmament is made. Other than that, there's also a story from a person who went with the army to the edge pretty much, and he was told about eyes, sky eyes, I believe that's what they were calling it. I think Priscilla also had the information. She actually, I think it was her who sent me a video of the testimony, which was very interesting, regarding how pretty much they would making a hole through the dome, but it would fill itself with time. So they would have to continue. The machinery that they had was not enough because they were already inside by a lot and couldn't reach the other side pretty much. So they ended up leaving what they had inside, and it all covered it in time. And well, he also gave some interesting details regarding that. And I wouldn't be surprised if there is a connection between this Skystone and that sky ice. And yeah, that's also a good point. Remember when Hillary said we're gonna break the glass ceiling? The glass ceiling, exactly like the sky, which is the limit. And that's right, Jay. Fear shows who really is firm and who is just emotion. Yeah, who has also shows who has true faith and confidence in the Most High. There was another question here. Does Methuselah connect with the last? Yeah, the name itself, because of the fact that when the last is killed, then the last 7 plagues fall on the earth. Those 7 plagues, like the 7 days that were added when Methuselah was, when he died. And by saying Hanoch, Methuselah, my son, it is kind of like talking to a descendant of Hanoch who would come in the future, and through that person's demise, the end would come. As we know, prophecies at least are fulfilled once in the time of the prophet in a microcosm. Then the macrocosm is pretty much at the end of times when all prophecies will end up being fulfilled once again in a higher way, just like the Exodus will happen again, but in a greater way. And in the middle of those two, there are other times in history when a certain prophecy can fit the event because of the fact that there's nothing new under the sun. That which was will be. And as we know, history repeats itself. So that's why a prophecy can be connected to several events in the past, but they are all coming to a final fulfillment, which is in our time. No, nothing here. So I'll continue with the book of Hanoch. So as we just saw, the Skystone, they found it, 77% oxygen. The experts said that that wasn't supposed to be on this earth. So it came from the heavens, that heavens being the firmament, the sky, which is like sapphire, as scripture says, which is blue, just like that stone. And that is why you look at the sky and it's blue. And even when you look at the moon, when you can see the moon during the day, the part that doesn't have light of the moon looks blue. It doesn't look black. It looks blue. So that's also something interesting when you think about it, as they tell us that the moon is where they tell us it is. So coming back to the chapter, I was lying down in the house of my grandfather, Mahalalel, and I saw in a vision how the sky collapsed, was loosened, and fell upon the earth. And when it fell upon the earth, I saw the earth devoured by a great abyss, mountains suspended over mountains. So in the first vision, Hanoch is pretty much seeing the first destruction of the earth, the time when the flood would happen, in which Yahweh would open the firmament so that the waters above would fall and gather with the waters below, which would come up also from the earth. So it says, hills knocked down, hills knocked down upon hills. The lofty trees broken up from the trunks, cast and sunk into the abyss. So hills knocked down upon hills, and the lofty trees broken up from the trunks, cast and sunk into the abyss. At these things, my voice faltered, and I raised my voice to cry out and said, the earth is destroyed. Then my grandfather, Mahalalel, woke me up since I was sleeping close to him and said to me, why do you cry out like this, my son? And for what reason do you utter such a lament? I related to him the entire vision that I had seen, and he said to me, thus, as you have seen a terrifying thing, my son, since the vision of your dream about the secrets of all the errors of the earth is terrible, thus the earth is about to be devoured by the abyss. So thus, as you have seen a terrifying thing, my son, since the vision of your dream about the secrets of all the errors of the earth is terrible, thus the earth is about to be devoured by the abyss and annihilated by a great destruction. Now, my son, rise up and beg the sovereign of worth, the Melech Hakabot, the king of esteem, honor, since you are trustworthy, that a remnant may be left upon the earth. So here Mahalalel is telling Hanoch that it is true what he just dreamt. It is going to happen because of what he had also known regarding, what the earth deserved because of the error of men. But now he's asking him, since he has a connection with the Most High, to beg for a remnant. This connects with the end times because, as we know, Yahushua said that the times of the Son of Man would be like the days of Noah. The days of the Son of Man would be like the days of Noah. Here is talking about what happened in the days of Noah, but it clearly connects with our time because of that connection that Mashiach mentioned. So here, by talking about the remnant, as we know that it's a term used to refer to the chosen few of the end times, the 144,000, those who have a seal on their foreheads who do not experience death. So keep that in mind as we read this part. So now, my son, rise up and beg the sovereign of worth, since you are trustworthy, like the faithful witness of revelation, which trustworthy is another word used for it, depending on the translation. Since you are trustworthy, that a remnant may be left upon the earth, and that he might not totally annihilate the earth. Also, look at how it's talking about a remnant to be left upon the earth. But in Christianity, because of certain movies, they are thinking of left behind as those who will be left after the rapture, in which they are hoping to be taken to heaven. However, in scriptures, we see how earth was to be inhabited by men, not only during this time, but also during eternity. That is the purpose of this part of creation, for humans to live in it. when it talks about the harvest, the scripture tells us that the chosen few will go up, but then we also have to come down to fight in the war of Armageddon and establish the kingdom pretty much for the 1,000 years, and then the judgment will happen. My point is that throughout scriptures, we see that the evil ones are the ones that are taken out of the earth, and the just, the righteous, are the ones who Yahweh allows to remain on earth. And as you guys know, the subject of the rapture is pretty much, well, something that I mention a lot because of the issues that are found in that doctrine, because of what we read in scriptures, in contrast to how they interpret certain verses of scriptures, taking them out of context. So, like I always say, I will be glad to speak with any person who has the doctrine of the rapture as a true doctrine, and the one that they may be believing in, and show with scriptures how that doctrine is wrong. Yet there is a harvest during the seventh trumpet, which is the last trumpet, as Paul said, but it will be for the remnant, for the few, as we see in scriptures over and over again. And that is pretty much becoming clear when we see the state of this earth and how the system has pretty much already most of the control over the minds of the people who are just following along with what they are told, even if it's something that is not really legal. So it says, "Now, my son, rise up and beg the sovereign of worth, since you are trustworthy, that a remnant may be left upon the earth, and that he might not totally annihilate the earth. My son, from heaven shall all this come down upon the earth, and upon the earth there shall be a great destruction. After I arose, I prayed, I implored, and I supplicated, and I wrote down my prayer for the generations of the world." So here, since he mentions the generations of the world, it shows that even though that vision was going to be fulfilled with Noah, this would be written and it would continue through Noah all the way to our time, and therefore we could also receive from it shalom, pretty much, and also words of words that we could also use to pray, in the sense of asking the Almighty for mercy and to be part of that remnant, pretty much. So I supplicated and I wrote down my prayer for the generations of the world, and I shall explain everything to you, Methuselah, my son. When I descended, I looked at the sky, and I saw the luminary orb emerge from the east, and the moon set in the west, and some stars, and the totality of the earth and everything that Yahweh the power has created from the beginning. Then I blessed the sovereign of the judgment, and I exalted him, because he makes the luminary orb exit through the windows of the east, so that it ascends and shines in the face of heaven, and goes and maintains the path which he has pointed out to it. So he pretty much, after receiving that revelation of the destruction of the earth, he comes out and sees the earth as such a beautiful creation that is amazing, that will go through that destruction. Also, to see how the sun listens and obeys the commandment that Yahweh gave it, and goes from east to west, and through those windows and gates that we saw in previous chapters, the 6 gates through which the sun goes. And the sun maintains the path which he has pointed out to it. Yet humanity does exactly the opposite. Yahweh says, don't do this, and that's what people want to do. We must be, even though we were given free will, since we know better, we understand that what he commands is what will make our lives good. Therefore, if we are smart, we will listen and therefore obey. Yet, because of that disobedience of humanity, Yahweh had to bring the flood. So when I descended, I looked at the sky and I saw the luminary orb emerge from the east, and the moon set in the west, and some stars and the totality of the earth and everything that Yahweh the power has created from the beginning. Then I blessed the sovereign of the judgment, and I exalted him because he makes the luminary orb exit through the windows of the east. Exit through the windows of the east, so that it ascends and shines in the face of heaven and goes and maintains the path which he has pointed out to. Plus, as we know, the last comes as the son of righteousness. So by him, after saying everything that he said, then he says, I shall explain everything to you, Methuselah, my son. He mentions how the son, the luminary orb, listens and obeys the father, and he goes from the east to the west, just like the first and the last. As we see also in Isaiah, prophesied that that's how we would be, first and last, east and west of the earth. So that's how that chapter ends. Let me see if there are any questions regarding those verses. It says, mine says eternity in verse 10. After I arose, I prayed, I implored, and I supplicated, and I wrote down my prayer for the generations. Okay, so there, I guess, for eternity. Yeah, that is because world in Hebrew is olam, but is also taken as eternity because of this world in Hebrew is olam haseh. Olam haseh is this world. Olam haba, the world to come. So since the world to come is eternal, then olam is connected with eternity. And that also has to do with the Jewish rabbis who made the word olam as meaning time and space. So as space being the world in which men live, but also time in which men live, but in a different way. So the word olam means pretty much eternity and world. That's how they write it, and that's why yours has eternity instead of world. So the generations of eternity. So for all generations, which means that we would be also reading this book, but from another point of view, to understand even more and more and more forever. Now, this translation has the generations of the world, pretty much, like I said, because olam, the main meaning of olam would be world. And since this vision has to do with destruction, obviously mainly refers to the destruction that would happen in this world. So I would think that would be the reason why it was translated this way here. So after I rose, I prayed. I already mentioned that. So I guess we finished that chapter. Chapter 83, verse 1. I lifted up my hands in righteousness and blessed the set apart one and the great one. And I spoke with the breath of my mouth and with a tongue of flesh, which Yahweh the power has formed for all the sons of mortal men, that they may use it in speech, and has given them a breath, a tongue, and a mouth in order to talk with them. So, mentioning the importance of the mouth and tongue and breath, which Yahweh gave us in order for us to communicate with him mainly, and then communicate with others. Also, the fact that it says, I bless the set apart one and the great one, that could be taken as the same one, but also as Yahweh and Yahushua. Yahweh and he who sits at the right hand. And therefore, Hanoch would be as the last, the Son of Man on earth, while the Son of Yahweh is at the right hand of the throne of the set apart one. Just like we see in Psalm 110, when David, as Hanoch in this case, says, Yahweh said to my Adon, said to my sovereign. That means Yahweh said to Yahushua. So pretty much the same here. Hanoch as the last praying for Yahweh to have mercy on a remnant, being those remnant, the 144,000 of Revelation 7 and Revelation 14. Also, if we were to only take the set apart one and the great one as the same one, then Hanoch would be Mashiach as the intercessor, of course, as the lawyer praying for us. So, verse 2, blessed are you, O Yahweh, the great King, and powerful in your greatness, King of kings, sovereign of all the world. Your power, kingdom, and greatness endure for always. Your sovereignty is for all the generations. The heavens are your eternal throne. There we go, like I mentioned earlier, the heavens are your eternal throne, as we see in the book of Ezekiel, in his vision, which he had in chapter 1 and chapter 10. And the earth is your footstool for the ages of the ages. That's why in Psalm 110, like I also mentioned, Yahweh tells Mashiach, Yahushua, sit at my right hand, which he did when he resurrected, until I go down and put your enemies as your footstool, which means that Lucifer, which is the enemy of Mashiach, falls to the earth, which happens in Revelation 12. So Yahweh, as the last, must come once again, as he prophesied in Deuteronomy 18 and in Isaiah several times, when he says, I am the first and I am the last. I am the first and I am myself will be with the last. Just like he also prophesied by saying, Eye asher eye, I will be that which I will be, meaning that he would be twice on this earth. So Yahweh says to Yahushua, who is already at his right hand, sit at my right hand until I go down and place your enemies as your footstool. That means that as Yahushua is at the right hand of the throne in heaven, as we see in Revelation when he opens the first seal, then the last manifest on earth to bring Lucifer, the enemy, and his third of the angels, the rest of his enemies, to the earth, which is the footstool. So, and the earth is your footstool for the ages of the ages. For it is you who have created them and who reigns over all things. There exists no act that is difficult for you. Wisdom does not distance itself from your throne. This is important because wisdom is the Ruach, just like pretty much the wife of the king. Like I have also mentioned, because of several writings, pretty much also what we read in scriptures. When I say writings, I meant the Gnostic writings, but mainly we see wisdom appearing in the book of Proverbs as the Ruach, talking about, well, a bunch of important things, but one of those that Yahweh made everything through wisdom. In fact, wisdom, as we know, the fear of Yahweh is the beginning of wisdom. So the beginning is connected with wisdom. That's why when in Genesis 1, it says, Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim et haaretz. In the beginning created Elohim, etc., etc. The word in the beginning, Bereshit, some take it as Bechokmah, which would mean with wisdom, he created the heavens and the earth. Instead of in the beginning, he created the heavens and the earth, because of the fact that the fear of Yahweh is the beginning of wisdom. So Bereshit, or with wisdom, Yahweh created the heavens and the earth, which is part of the things that wisdom tells us in the book of Proverbs. Chokmah in Hebrew And it is pretty much, one could say, the counterpart of Mashiach in the sense of Adam and Eve. Mashiach is the truth. The Ruach is the wisdom. So Adam and Eve, truth and wisdom. The truth, which is Mashiach, he said, I am the truth. But when he left the Ruach, he left the Ruach of wisdom. The last comes to bring understanding of that wisdom, pretty much, to then have knowledge of the Father. So wisdom does not distance itself from your throne. Like I said, Mashiach is at the right hand. And if we see wisdom as Ruach, as feminine, then it would be like the queen, in the sense of, like I said, the wife of the king, not in the sense of what we see in Jeremiah, the spirit, which they would call the queen of heaven. So wisdom does not distance itself from your throne, nor does it leave your presence. You know, see and hear all things. Nothing is concealed for you because you see everything. Also, the point with saying all of that about wisdom is because we see here wisdom as something separate from the Father, which would be an emanation, something that came out of him, and that would be the Ruach, which emanated when he had a will. So that Ruach is also the will of the Father. So, you know, see and hear all things, nothing is concealed for you because you see everything. Now the Malachim, the envoys of the heavens, are convicted of error, and on the mortal flesh of man befalls your wrath until the great day of judgment. Look how it mentions the great day of judgment, which mainly has to do with what we see in the book of Revelation, what is about to happen. Obviously, the flood was a day of judgment for that generation. And that's why the days of the Son of Man would be like the days of Noah. That shows that a prophecy has at least two fulfillments in the time in which it was given, and once at the end when everything will come to, well, pretty much an end. So everything will connect so that we can enter the new reality, pretty much. So verse 6, now, O Yahweh, the power, O Yahweh, Elohim, sovereign and great king, I implore and supplicate you to accept my prayer, that you may live a posterity to me on earth, that you might not annihilate the entire race of mortal men, that you might not leave the earth empty, and that the destruction might not be eternal. That you might not leave the earth empty, and that the destruction might not be eternal. So look at the prayer. He's not praying for, please take us to heaven. Please take us to heaven. He's saying, please leave us on this earth. And that is the blessing, because of the difference between heaven and earth, and the fact that this earth was created so that everything would be separated, unlike in heaven, in which everything is one. The answer and the question, right and left, everything is one, because Yahweh is one and he doesn't change. That's why time itself doesn't exist, because it is eternity. So that's why there is no change. Change only exists in this reality. The change of not knowing and then knowing, which in itself is one of the pleasures of the soul. And those pleasures can only be basically experienced in this reality. So that's why he gave us 5 senses, just like there are 5 fingers and 5 books in the Torah. So it says that you might not leave the earth empty, and that the destruction might not be eternal. So now, O Yahweh, exterminate from the earth the flesh that has awakened your wrath. exterminate from the earth the flesh that has awakened your wrath. Look how in this case, Hanoch is being clear. I'm not saying not to bring your judgment. I'm not saying that you shouldn't judge those who are evil. I'm just saying have mercy on those who have been righteous. Exterminate from the earth the flesh that has awakened your wrath. In this society nowadays, people are rebelling against the Most High and are expecting to receive blessings and love from him, when scripture shows us how Yahweh loved Jacob but despised Esau. So now, O Yahweh, exterminate from the earth the flesh that has awakened your wrath, but establish the flesh of righteousness and uprightness. Here, the flesh of righteousness and uprightness. That is pretty much tzedakah and the yashar, which is the righteous. I mean, the upright one. And those two words have to do with first and last. Once again, tzedakah, justice, in the sense that Yahushua through his death made us righteous. So righteousness connects with Mashiach the first, who came as the Sadiq, the righteous one. And then the last comes as the Yashar. That's why it's also connected with the name Yisrael. He's represented by Yaakov, who became Yisrael, and the word Yashar can be found in the name Yisrael, the first letters of it. So Yashar is connected with the last, uprightness. And then it says, like an eternal plant of seed, and do not hide your face from the prayer of your servant, O Yahweh. An eternal plant of seed. Yahushua came as the seed, the word of Yahweh, who through his death was planted in the earth. He went down as the root, so that people would come up from Sheol and become the fruit of his labor, meaning of him being killed and then buried. And through that fruit, through that growth, pretty much, would come a branch, which would be the last, who as the fruit of that branch would have the 144,000. So this plant goes from the root to the branch, from the first to the last. And the trunk, that which is in between, is pretty much the time, the 2,000 years from the first to the last, which through the apostasy pretty much was cut off, as we see in Isaiah 11, where it says that from that trunk of Yishai, a branch would come out from something that seemed to be already over with. Yahweh would make something new, just like he did with the scepter or the branch that Aharon had. Moshe's brother, whose scepter grew a branch and gave fruit. So it was saying, so now, O Yahweh, exterminate from the earth the flesh that has awakened your wrath, but establish the flesh of righteousness and uprightness, like an eternal plant of seed, and do not hide your face from the prayer of your servant, O Yahweh. So that's how that chapter ends. All right. So chapter 84, verse 1. After this, I saw another dream, and I will show you this entire dream, my son. Hanoch raised his voice and said to his son Methuselah, I wish to speak to you, my son. Listen to my words and pay attention to the visionary dream of your father. Before I took your mother, Etna, look how the name starts with Ed, which is witness. So it is possible, because I don't have the Hebrew version of the book, so I don't know how this name is being written in Hebrew, so it could be connected to something else. But through the beginning of the name, that would be the word witness in Hebrew, Ed, and therefore connects once again Hanoch with the witness like Moshe. For his wife had this name, and as we know, when the man marries, becomes one. So it has a comment here. This second vision of Hanoch portrays a symbolic language, the complete history of the world from the time of Adam down to the final judgment and establishment of the kingdom of Yahweh. It says, I saw a vision on my bed, and look, a bull sprung forth from the earth. This is the beginning of time, when Adam, as the bull, was made from the earth. And it is important because it starts with a bull. And that is important because the last is a bull, the ox that will be sacrificed in Yom Kippur as prophesied in Leviticus 16 through those sacrifices pretty much of the feast of Yom Kippur. And that is important because the last is called the son of Adam, Ben Adam, the son of Adam. So the son of man, as we know, means comes from the Hebrew, the son of Adam, because Adam means men. So, and look, a bull sprung forth from the earth. That is the first man. So here he is given a vision of the entire time of human history, obviously focusing on the main spiritual events and with the growth of humanity from the very beginning, and with, depending on the human and the time in history, being represented by a certain animal due to its features, and also obviously the actions of those people who will be represented by those animals, as we are about to see. And this bull was white. After the bull, a female heifer sprung forth, and with her 2 calves, one of which was black and the other red. So a white bull, meaning, just like is mentioning an animal to refer to Adam, the animal, the bull, which is the king of the farm animals, just like the lion is the king of the jungle. The eagle is the queen, I guess, or king of the birds, and man is the king of creation. And that's why those are the 4 faces that are around the throne of Yahweh. So since Adam was created to be the king of creation and be a servant of Yahweh, being obedient like a bull, then he is represented by a bull. And white, nothing to do with flesh, as perhaps some would connect it, but it has to do with the spiritual, being completely pure. When he was created, he was set apart, pretty much represented by the white. So, and this bull was white. After the bull, a female heifer sprung forth. That would be Eve, of course, Hava. And with her 2 calves. This is very interesting because it doesn't say, and then the bull got with the female and they got 2 calves. No, it says that a female heifer sprung forth and with her 2 calves. In the Gnostic books, there is a certain part where we see that Eve's body, after having been created, before having Ruach in it, was left unattended in a way. And the angels, the authorities, left their seed in that body. When she became alive, she had that seed in her body, which came as Cain and Hebel or Abel. And that will be also part of the reason why one was black and one was red when the bull was white. And also, I mentioned about the Gnostic books, but we also see it in scriptures. There's a reason why it is in the Gnostic book explained in a clearer way. But in Genesis, we see in Genesis 5 that the only son that came directly from Adam was Seth, Genesis 5. And he was in his image and likeness, which means that Cain and Hevel were not in his likeness. They were different because they came from the seed of those malachim, which were, which were trying to have descendants in this reality through Eve. And pretty much that's why Cain was like Satan. He pretty much represents Samael, even though in the Gnostic books it says that his seed came from Sabaoth. And it is like in a mirror. Heaven and earth is like a mirror. So many times, like when you look at yourself in a mirror, you may have something written on your shirt and it will appear backwards. So that's pretty much what happens with an image, a reflection. So since Sabaoth or Halel, Lucifer, and Samael were two of the authorities that placed their seed within that body, then came Cain and Hevel, Cain and Abel. Cain was from the seed of Halel, but was a representation of Samael, while Hevel came from the seed of Samael, but was a representation of Halel, because of what happened before humans were made. When Samael fell, he was placed on the left, and Halel was placed on the right. And that's how he became the accuser eventually, by using justice as the excuse to destroy those who have sinned against the Torah. Hope this is understood. The point is that it is important that it says that she came with two calves already, one which was black and the other red. Then the black calf struck the red one. And once again, the black has nothing to do with flesh or the color of the flesh. It has to do with the spirit, the darkness of it, meaning evil. So then the black calf struck the red one and pursued it over the earth. It's interesting that one was black, like darkness, like evil, which is represented by darkness, which is connected with Samael, just pure evil. On the other hand, Lucifer is called the red dragon, and here we see how the bull was red, which is connected with sin, like the one he accuses humans of, yet he is the one who ended up sinning by killing Mashiach, who never sinned, who never broke the law. Therefore, according to the law, he was supposed to live forever, yet Lucifer killed him and therefore broke the law, which he was using to accuse all humanity, and that's how he lost his job. So then the black calf struck the red one and pursued it over the earth. And from then on, I could not see the red calf. Pursued it over the earth. And from then on, so that is when obviously Cain killed Abel. Interesting that it says over the earth, as in it took it off the earth. Afterwards, the black calf grew and a female heifer went with that one. So we see how there's a question that I get a lot in the radio, which is, where did Cain get his wife? Because we read that he left and then he met his wife in the place where he was after he left. So people think that when it says that he met his wife, well, it says that he knew his wife, really. So they take it as he met her there. But what it actually means is that he had sex with her. He knew her in an intimate way. So that doesn't mean that he met her there as if she was somebody who came from somewhere else, from another family. Instead, as you see here in the parentheses, it says Lulua, which was the name of his sister. When he was born with a twin sister. And he took her and left Adam and Eve and went to a place where he built a city called Hanoch, the name of his first son. This Hanoch, whose book we are reading, is not the Hanoch, son of Cain, is the Hanoch, son of Seth. Just want to make that clear. But also look how it says, and a female heifer went with that one. So we see how Cain's wife was born from Eve, and she went with Cain. It's not like Cain went away alone and then he met his wife somewhere else. So afterwards, the black calf grew, and a female heifer went with that one. And I saw come out of him numerous oxen that resembled him and followed him. And the first heifer left the first bull. When Cain killed Abel, there was a separation. Adam divorced Eve, and they were separated for 130 years. Because he thought, why would I bring children to this world if they are going to kill each other? It makes no sense. So he separated from his wife and decided not to have children. But during that time, it is said, at least in Jewish tradition, that Lilith, the other entity that came, would have been created from soil before Eve, yet rebelled and left and became the mother of the demons with Samael as its partner. It is said that during those 130 years, Lilith would send her spirits to take the sexual energy through nocturnal emissions from Adam to create demons through it. So it was seen as an error, which Adam came to understand eventually when he had to talk to the wives of Lamech, and he realized that he was supposed to go back with Eve, and that's how Seth came to be, which is where we come from. So, and the first heifer left the first bull to search for the red heifer. Well, I already made a whole explanation, but that was not the point. It's talking about he went to look for the one who was killed. Before they knew that Abel was killed, they were wondering, and they went to look for him. So, and the first heifer left the first bull. So Eve went to look for Abel to search for the red heifer, but did not find him. And she lamented for him with a great lamentation while she was seeking him. I saw that the first bull came, meaning Adam, and made her be quiet, and she ceased to lament. She soon called another white cow. So it says, and afterwards, this one begot many black bulls and cows. Black bulls and cows. So here, well, we see the parentheses set. By mentioning the cow, we could say it would be a female to whom all those black bulls and cows came from. But just a second. Also, the fact that it says white obviously is referring to, once again, pureness, in contrast to Cain, who was black, meaning evil. She soon calved another white cow, and afterwards this one begat many black bulls and cows. I saw in my dream this white bull grow until becoming a great white bull. All right, poor Eve was desecrated. Maybe that's why she was more prone to listen to evil. Well, I guess that wouldn't be the reason. And well, yeah, she would have been desecrated, her body, even though her soul was not there yet. So in a way, it's not like she was traumatized or raped as it goes, but in a way, while her body, after her body would have been formed, then they placed their seed, and that would be a desecration, of course. But my point is not exactly how how bad it is for females who go through something like that. So, but females have since, like I said, the ruach, when it appears in scripture, appears as female, then that shows how a female has a spiritual um, side to her, in the sense that she represents the spirit, so therefore is more spiritually inclined. But that also can become an issue, because as just as well as she can listen to the Most High, she can also listen to the enemy. So then that's where emotion and the imagination come to play a role, in which the enemy tries to fool the woman into thinking that she is obeying the Most High, sometimes if she doesn't discern. And when I say also she and all that as a female, that it has to do with the congregation. You know, the congregation is the wife of Yahushua, and the congregation as a whole is made up of males and females, of course. And like I always say, when there's a group of people, they're represented by a female, like the congregation is the bride for the wedding of the Lamb. But individuals are represented by males. So just like we have one head, but then several parts in the body. So females have a stronger connection to the spiritual. That's what they call the sixth sense. And also there is, in a way, like I have also said in other studies, there is a positive way in which what Eve did in the garden can be taken. Some see it, in Judaism mainly, as Eve realizing that it was necessary to enter this reality in order to eventually get to a better reality, eventually get to a greater creation. So some believe that she actually realized that Yahweh had placed them in that position in order to enter in this reality, because Yahweh would not place us in a reality of death unless we would choose so. But then why would he create this reality unless he wanted us to raise it up through his ruach by our actions, elevate this reality to a perfect reality through the plan that he had, obviously by bringing Yahushua HaMashiach and giving us his spirit, forgiving us of sin, and then being able to, through his ruach within us, elevate this reality. So then let me see what else. Maybe the black and red calves could represent the second and third horsemen in Revelation between the first horse. Interesting, good point. I mean, they are the same colors of the first three: white, red, and black. Those are the first three colors mentioned. So yeah, it is a good point. Then it says, did Abel go to Sheol when he died, or where did he go? Yeah, to Sheol. He opened it, pretty much inaugurated it. Could that Cain killing Abel represent Samael ultimately betraying Lucifer to bring him to the lake of fire with him? Yeah, completely. It also, in the positive sense of that story, when Cain killed Abel for bringing a good offering to Yahweh, while Cain was bringing the worst things and was bringing something that represented his works by his flesh, while Abel was bringing the sacrifice of an animal representing the sacrifice of the lamb. So Yahweh accepted that sacrifice. Cain hated it, so he killed him. So that represents how Satan hated Mashiach and was jealous and therefore killed him because of his sacrifice, or through his sacrifice. And then came Seth, which means substitute, because he came to substitute Abel, who was killed by Cain. So the last is Seth, who came to take the place of the one who is the first, Mashiach, Yahushua, who was killed 2,000 years ago. So Cain kills Abel. That's a prophecy of Satan killing Mashiach. And then Yahweh sending another one, a substitute, just like the name Yaakov means supplanter, synonym of substitute pretty much, which is also seen in a negative light, as we see when Esau told him about it. So, like I said, in the positive sense, Cain killing Abel represents Satan killing Mashiach, and that said as the last coming to the earth to substitute the first. That's why Mashiach said to the disciples, you will see me, but the world will not see me anymore, because the world would see the substitute. But in the negative of Cain and Abel coming from those seeds and representing, in a way, Samael and Lucifer, yeah, it would show how they would betray one another, and then at the end, Lucifer would go to the lake of fire and be kicked out of heaven, just like Samael was. Woman is not inferior. A woman is a crown to a man. Exactly. Oh, let me see. There was something previous. Right, and she had evil seed inside her. Yeah, but just because of a seed, well, I mean, I understand the point. You could say that because of the seed, there was an influence pretty much from her inside that would incline her to accept what the serpent was saying, which would have been pretty much one of the malachim who placed one of those seeds within her. So, yeah, in a way, there could be a connection there, of course, in the negative sense. Once again, I repeat, but I don't believe that Eve was contaminated through that, in the sense that said, since he came from the seed of Adam, he was set apart, he was pure. That's why he appears as a white bull, just like Adam. So that would mean that she wasn't contaminated, in the sense that even after having them from that seed of the Malachim, if she would have been corrupted through that, then said would have been also corrupted. And he says, I'm not trying to defend women. I know no, you're not inferior at all. Not inferior. We are the same, just a complement of each other. And just because the body is in the lower part, it doesn't mean it's inferior. The head could not do anything without the body. Just like the brain without the heart cannot work, and the heart without the brain cannot work. They're complements, head and body. They need each other, just like male and female. So not at all inferior, just different. Just help me see how she could have been manipulated as the mother of all. Women is not inferior. That's right. That's right. And also remember that in Mashiach, there's no male nor female. We are all one. So that explains it even clearer. So I'll continue with the dream. And afterward, this one begat many black bulls and cows. I saw in my dream this white bull grow until becoming a great white bull, from which numerous white bulls resembling him came forth. And they began to procreate numerous white bulls that resembled them, and which followed each other. So that is meaning the generation that came from Seth, which were righteous people. And we already answered the questions regarding that chapter. And they began to procreate numerous white bulls that resembled them, and which followed each other. So the line of Seth, from whom Hanoch came, the writer of this book. Chapter 85. Again, I was looking attentively in the dream, and I surveyed the sky above, and look, a single star fell from heaven, a single star fell from heaven, which, as we saw, Shemhasa was the leader of the fallen angels. And stars are pretty much the physical bodies in the sense of this reality of the Malachim, meaning the energy of the Malachim enters this reality through the stars. And that's why many people worship the stars and see the stars to tell them where they're going, pretty much. So, and I mean in life, not just like sailors. Again, I was looking attentively in the dream, and I surveyed the sky above, and look, a single star fell from heaven in the midst of the large bulls, and ate and pastured in their midst. Then I saw these large black bulls, and look, all of them exchanged their pastures, stalls, and yearling calves, and began to live one with another. Again, I looked in my dream and looked towards the sky, and look, many stars were descending and fell from the sky to where the first star was, which is Mount Hermon, where they made a pact that if one would be caught and condemned, the rest would also be condemned. They would accept that condemnation. So first Shemhasa, and then the rest of the angels. As we know, 200 of them came down. Again, I looked in my dream and looked towards the sky, and look, many stars were descending and fell from the sky to where the first star was, and were being transformed into bulls. So when the Malachim, which are represented by the stars, came down, they became as humans in order to be able to procreate with females. So that's why, since humans till that moment are being represented by bulls of different colors representing their behavior, now the angels came down, the stars, and became bulls as humans so that they could procreate. And we're being transformed into bulls among those yearling calves and pastured with them and among them. I watched them and saw how all took their sexual member like horses and mounted the cows of the bulls, and all became pregnant and gave birth to elephants, camels, and asses. So since they were angels, not real humans, when they had sex with females, they gave birth to different creations, different creatures, not bulls, not humans, which is what bulls are represented till this moment, but elephants, camels, and asses. Different animals representing different types of children, which, as we know, the angels had children with the females and they procreated giants. For instance, an elephant is pretty big compared to other animals. The asses are strong, or well, they're connected nowadays with being a fool. And I'm pretty sure the giants were not really that smart because of the evilness within them, but it represents strength also. Camels represent riches. That's why Yahushua spoke about being easier for a camel to go through the eye of the needle than for a rich person to go into heaven. So I watched them and saw how all took out their sexual member like horses and mounted the cows of the bulls, and all became pregnant and gave birth to elephants, camels, and asses. All the bulls were afraid of these, were terrified at them, and they began biting with their teeth, devouring and striking with their horns. And besides these began also to devour those bulls. And look, all the sons of the earth began to tremble and be frightened before them and to flee. So that is when the giants began to eat humans and destroy them. And that's when humans, represented by the bulls, became afraid of the children of the Malachim. It says, so since Seth spoke Hebrew and his line did as well, and they didn't participate in the Tower of Babel, that means they didn't get their language confused. So another evidence for it being the first language. Yeah, good point. And yeah, that's also part of what they mentioned in the book Lashon HaKodesh by Klein. Klein, that's the only name I see in the book. Also, well, that was through Abraham, right? Who came from Seth. Yahweh decided to leave the original language to Abraham. And through him, that's how it became the Hebrew language, because he was the first Hebrew, because he crossed the Euphrates River. And Hebrew means he who crosses from the other side, pretty much. And also because of Hebron, which is one from whom also Abraham came. But it was in the time of Abraham when that language remained in the family. So, and yeah, Yahweh created everything in Hebrew, right? Exactly. Elephants, camels, and asses could connect to the three type of giant. Yeah, exactly. What connection is there of horses or their sexual organ? What is it implying? Size or brutality? Both. One, the way he saw it, they were having sex just like a horse would mount on top of the other, of the female. But the mention of the size will refer to the fact that the children that would come from them would be giants, because these angels were from heaven, and therefore it is possible also that size was, as you know, when it comes to lust and all of that, is something that they give a lot of importance to. So it is possible that these angels appeared in that way also, so that they could, as you say here, be pretty brutal when doing what they did. And also it is said that since the women procreated giants, when they gave birth, they would die because they were so huge. So that pretty much connected with the seed that would come from those angels, the way that he explains it. So I'll continue with chapter 86. Again, I saw how they began to strike one another and to devour each other, and the earth started to cry out. Then I raised my eyes towards the sky. Then I raised my eyes again towards the sky, and I had a vision. See here, there came forth from heaven beings similar to white men. Four came forth from thence, even three with him. So he saw four, but then he says three with him, as in there was one who was the main one, and then there were three with him, that main one being Michael. It is interesting that it says white, there were men, because of the fact that till this point humans have been represented by bulls. So the fact that these four angels appear as males show that they were of a higher level, and the fact that, I mean, higher level than Shemchasa was, because he was referred to as a star. Here, these four angels, which represent also the four cherubim around the throne of Yahweh, the four letters of the name Yahweh, the four levels of interpretation, the four levels of creation, emanation, creation, formation, and action. So Michael being the main one of these four, and like I said, by appearing as a man, is connected with the fact that when humans were made, they were made in the image and likeness of someone above, that someone being Mashiach. But as I have mentioned, Michael is pretty much the voice of Yahweh, the fire, while Yahushua HaMashiach is the word, the water. First the water, then the fire, first the word, then the voice, first and last. So then I raised my eyes again towards the sky, and I had a vision. See, here three came forth from, there came forth from heaven beings similar to white men. Four came forth from thence, even three with him. It says here, so angels were higher than humans before Mashiach. Yep, because men were animals before Mashiach made us real men. No, not like that. Like that. I wouldn't call humans animals ever. But my point, here my point was that it is written that we were made a bit lower than the angels, right? When it comes to strength and knowledge and other things, but that through Mashiach we will become greater. We will judge angels. My point was that in comparison between angels and even the best of humans in the time before Mashiach, there was a difference, just like there is a difference between humans and animals. That's why when an angel had sex with a human, is like a human having sex with an animal. That's why it is an abomination. And he brought so much evil to the earth when they did it, and they have done it several times afterwards. So now when it comes to the fact that animals are creatures, before Yahushua, humans were all just creatures, just like animals. In that sense, they were the same, just creatures. But through Mashiach, humans become children of Yahweh, as we see in John 1:12. So we go to a higher level, just like the difference between a slave and a son. And also remember that Yahweh created in 7 days to show that this reality would last 7,000 years. The last 1,000 years is a Shabbat. So the first 6,000 years will be the time of evil, pretty much, of sin, of working for the enemy. That's why work is connected to the first 6 days. So since Yahweh created everything in 6 days, and he went, he first did, he made the light, then the firmament, separated the waters, then made the land come up, then he made the plants, then he made the luminaries, then he made the animals of the sea and the heavens, and then he made the animals of the earth, and then humans. So that shows how humanity would go through different, through 6,000 years growing and growing and growing, from being something like just matter to a creature, and then to a human. So the true human that Yahweh was expecting to create was that which we will become through Yahushua, meaning the 144,000 through Yahushua will become the humans that Yahweh was expecting to receive from this reality. So just like Yahweh made Adam and then Eve, Yahweh made Yahushua and then the congregation to get them together at the end of the 6,000 years, just like Adam and Eve got together at the end of the 6 days of creation. So, continuing. Thus, those three who came forth last took me by my hand and carried me over the spawn of the earth to an elevated place, and they showed me a lofty tower built on the earth. So we just saw the destruction, pretty much, that the giants did on the earth, killing many humans. Then it jumps to the story of the Tower of Babel. Thus, those three who came forth last took me by my hand and carried me over the spawn of the earth to an elevated place, and they showed me a lofty tower built on the earth, and every hill was lower than it. And they said, remain here until you have seen all what shall happen to those elephants, camels, and asses, and to the stars, the cows, and to all of them. So that's how that chapter ends. I'll continue with another one, I guess. Chapter 87, verse 1. I saw one of the 4 white men who had come forth first, seized, and this would be Raphael because of what is going to be said afterwards, and also because he doesn't, you know how he mentioned Michael as the main one. So since he says he saw one of the 4, not the one, then it would refer to one of the other 3, in this case, Raphael, Gabriel, and it's possible Suriel. So I saw one of the 4 white men who had come forth first. Once again, the white has to do with set apartness, their pureness. I'm just gonna say that. I saw one of the 4 white men who had come first, seized the first star that had fallen down from the heavens, Shem Chasa, bind it hand and foot, and cast it into the deep, narrow, steep, and dark abyss. As we know, the dark and deep, narrow, steep abyss is the bottomless pit where Abaddon is, and hence he'll come out in the 5th trumpet to then enter or control the beast so that he may kill the 2 witnesses, and then will take a body, the image of the beast, to appear as the false Messiah. He will claim to be the Christ, and the world will accept him, sadly, because they have accepted the lie, and Yahweh allowed it because they rejected the truth. For not having the love for the truth, Yahweh gives them the lie so that they may accept it. And well, that is in Thessalonians. I'm not saying that Shem Chaza is Abaddon. Everything points to Abaddon being Azazel, which is the other angel that fell with Shem Chaza, the one that ended up being worse than Shem Chaza when it came to what he taught and brought to the earth. So that's why he's given all the guilt of all the sins of the world, all the sins of men. The guilt for it is on Azazel, as we also see in the Yom Kippur feast, Leviticus 16, when there was a goat on whom all the sins of the people were placed, and then the goat was freed in the desert for Azazel, Leviticus 16. So then one of them, in this case would be Gabriel, drew the sword and gave it to the elephants, camels, and asses, and they began to injure each other, and the entire earth shook because of this. They started killing each other, the giants themselves, since they were evil, since they could not live in shalom, in peace, they began to kill each other. And also, since we see that it is the sword given to them to kill each other, it is understood that it was Gabriel, the one who would have done it. Then I continued observing my dream, when look, one of those 4 who had come forth received a command from heaven, and he took all the numerous stars whose sexual members were like those of horses, and he bound them all hand and foot, and cast them in an abyss of the earth. So we see how he took all the angels, and once again he mentions their members, their sexual members, like those of horses. Once again, remember that a horse represents war. So they brought war to the earth through their sexual intercourse with females. They brought destruction to the earth through what they did. So that also connects with the mention of horses. Remember that Azazel taught humans how to make weapons of war, and then they began to kill each other in a more efficient way, sadly. And then they continue making more and more destructive weapons throughout the years until nowadays when they can destroy the earth in minutes if they wanted to. So it says here 87:4 sounds like the second seal. Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking about also. When the second seal is open, a sword is given to the rider of the red horse so that he can take shalom from the earth, meaning bringing war. And the entire earth will shake because of that. Chapter 88 says, verse 1, one of those four went unto one of the white bulls and instructed it, and he constructed for himself a ship, and he dwelt in its interior. So obviously this would be Noah who made the ark. One of those four, Suriel, one of the four angels, went unto one of the white bulls. That would be Noah. Interestingly enough, in this case, the white would, when he was born, he was an albino, and that would have been the first ever. And actually, we will see it eventually in this book when that happens, and his father is scared that he wasn't his because of how white he was, which shows that the skin of the first ones were not as white. And also, he was afraid that Noah was the son of the angels, which would mean that when the giants were born, most of them were white in that sense, because when Noah was born as an albino, Lamech, his father, was scared that he might have been a Nephilim, which is also important because the last comes as Michael becoming a man, as the son of men, and Yahweh speaks of the last as a Gibor. The term Gibor is a term that is also used for the Nephilim. So it's interesting that the son of man is mentioned as a Gibor, and he comes in the days, well, the days of the son of man being like the days of Noah. And Noah was thought to be a Nephilim, therefore a Gibor. So one of those four went unto one of the white bulls and instructed it and constructed for himself a ship, and he dwelt in its interior. Here we see how Yahweh sent an angel to tell Noah what to do. We see that Yahweh told Noah, but Yahweh Elohim, so meaning Yahweh through the Malachim, spoke to Noah so that he knew what to do. The three bulls entered with him in the ship that covered them, and I saw a lofty roof over them. So Shem, Ham, and Yafet, his three children. Again, I lifted up my eyes towards heaven, and I saw seven cataracts pouring forth much water upon the earth. So all the water was coming down, meaning the seven, which represents earthly completion. And look, the deposits of water of the interior of the earth opened up. So not only was water coming down, also coming up. The water above, the water below, getting together to bring a new world to existence, a new reality, meaning that that which Noah would be the first of. So, and the water began to spring up and the waters to rise upon the earth. I continued watching until the earth was covered with the waters by the darkness and by the fog which filtered over it. According to this, the scribes wrote something in between these two verses and they removed it. So I'm going to check real quick what that would be. And water, darkness, and mist increased on it, and looked at the height of that water, and that water had risen above that enclosure and was pouring out over the enclosure, and it remained on earth. And all the bulls of that enclosure were gathered together until I saw how they sank. So yeah, I'm not sure. I think that part is not here either. I guess it will be this part. And I look at the height of the water, and the water had risen above the enclosure and was pouring out over the enclosure, and it remained on the earth. Yeah, I think that's the part. Mine also says overflowing that enclosure. Yeah. So I guess that's why they took it out, because it would seem as if the ship went down like a submarine, which we know is not the case, but it is very possible that because of all the mess of the water coming down and going up, in the beginning, it was a little bit, it was being covered a little bit by water, not necessarily completely, of course, because then we wouldn't be here. So by the darkness and by the fog which filtered over it, the bulls were submerged, which is pretty much the same as what I was just saying. Distanced and destroyed in the, oh, well, in this case is mentioned in the other bulls, the humans that were outside the ark, of course. The bulls were submerged, distanced, and destroyed in the water. But the ship floated upon the waters. But all the bulls, wild asses, camels, and elephants sank in the waters. Again, I saw in my dream how those cataracts of water disappeared from that lofty roof. Disappeared from that lofty roof. So that lofty roof could be the actual firmament from where the waters were coming down. Then it says the gorges of the earth became leveled, but other abysses were open. And the water began to descend through them until the land was left uncovered. So the water stopped coming down from the firmament. Then the earth started opening so that the water would go down. And the water began to descend through them until the land was left uncovered. The ship rested on the earth. The darkness receded and the light appeared. Which all kind of connects also with the beginning of all creation. When Yahweh made the light, separated light from darkness, then separated the waters, made the land appear from the water, etc. So just like Yahweh made the two first tablets, which Moshe broke, and then Moshe had to make the new tablets himself. Adam was made by Elohim, but he broke creation in time. So Yahweh sent Noah as the new, well, like I was saying, Moshe, to he himself, through him, make a new creation. So through the flood, Yahweh was recreating the earth, and we see several connections with what we read in Genesis. But this time Noah had come from a human instead of Adam, who came from the soil and was formed by the hands of Elohim. So I repeat, is like the finger of Elohim who made the tablets, which were broken by Moshe first, and then Moshe having to make them again himself. Like now Noah would come to the new world and repopulate it through his children. So the ship rested on the earth, the darkness receded, and the light appeared. And also that connection of Adam made from the soil, from the virgin earth, connects with Mashiach coming from a virgin, directly from heaven as the son of Yahweh. While the last son of man comes like in the days of Noah. So like Noah, the son of man, he doesn't have to come from a virgin. He comes from a female and a male seed, just like Noah. So it's the same connect once again with Moshe making, bringing the tablets that Yahweh made with his finger, that representing what Yahushua did. And then Moshe having to do it himself represents the last, who comes as the prodigal son in confusion and other things that are just like everybody else. so that nobody can object in judgment about what they experience compared to what Yahweh himself experienced when he appeared as the first and last. For there he would receive all the experience of the human life. And well, the human experience, pretty much. There was something I was going to say. So there was another connection with that I was saying regarding first and last, as the first tablets, and then the second tablets as Adam and Noah entering a new world. And yeah, well, there are several other connections like that, showing the plan of Yahweh of first and last. The first tablets were broken because when Moshe came down, they were worshiping the golden calf. Just like when Mashiach went up to appear before the Father as the Bikurim, the first fruits from the dead, people started worshiping the golden calf, a false doctrine, throughout these 2,000 years in what the scripture calls the apostasy. So now the last has to come at the end of 40 Jubilees, just like Moshe went for the other tablets at the end of 40 days, in order to confirm the covenant by he himself, once again, being given in sacrifice. And I say once again in the sense of Yahweh, first and last. And that is also connected, that was what I was going to say, with when Moshe came out of Egypt and he hit the rock to give water to Israel. That is the time when Yahweh prophesied that Mashiach, the rock, would be hit, would be killed in order to bring forgiveness of sins, to bring the teaching, to bring the water of life. 40 years later, Moshe is told not to hit the rock, but to speak to the rock. But Moshe hits the rock once again, showing that a rock had to be hit at the end of 40 Jubilees, just like the end of 40 years when Moshe hit the rock, even though Yahweh told him not to. So Yahweh was speaking when he told him to hit the rock at the beginning of the 40 years. That was a representation of him having to come down as the lamb, being hit for our sins. But then when Moshe hit it by his own decision, that meant that the witness like Moshe had to come at the end of the 40 Jubilees to die as well. But that having to do with the will, because the will of Yahweh separates in two: the perfect will and the permissible will, pretty much, which is what happens through humans' free will. So because of free will, humans sin because they have the freedom to not do what Yahweh wants, but instead what they themselves want, because of their flesh, pretty much. Because if they follow the spirit, they would do what Yahweh wants. But that is what came to humans through the knowledge of good and evil, pretty much, the inclination to do evil in the flesh. So there are two parts of the will of Yahweh, which at the end will become one, once again, just like the first and the last, who will become one. Yahushua is the perfect will. The last is the permissible will, and that's why he comes as the prodigal son, born in confusion, like Zorobabel. So Zorobabel represents the last. But I'll continue with this chapter. The ship rested on the earth. The darkness receded, and the light appeared. Then the white bull, which had become a man, came out of the ship, and with him the three bulls. So this is important. The white bull, Noah, became a man through entering in the ark, going through the flood, and coming out of the flood, out of the ark. Is like the last, who comes as the bull of Yom Kippur, the son of man, like the days of Noah. So the son of man is like Noah. So that's why he comes like a bull for Yom Kippur to be sacrificed, with Eliyahu as the ram of the three sacrifices that are given in Yom Kippur according to Leviticus 16. The third being the male goat for Yahweh, which was represented by Yahushua 2,000 years ago when he was placed next to Barabbas and the people asked for Mashiach to be sacrificed. So then the white bull, which had become a man. So that represents how the last, once he dies, representing entering the ark and he resurrects, that's when he becomes the human that Yahweh wanted him to be. When the last becomes one with Mashiach, who is the image from whom Yahweh made humans. So when the last becomes one with the first, is like Noah becoming a man after being a bull. So then the white bull, which had become a man, came out of the ship, and with him the three bulls, one of which was white and resembled that bull. So one was like him, that would be Shem. Name, which means name. It's important. One of which was white and resembled that bull. Another was red like blood, Yafet. Red, just like Abel was. So that shows us how Shem is like Seth or Shet. Yafet is like Abel. And the one that is last, Ham, is like Cain. So the three children that came from Eve are connected with the three children that came from Noah. So that is important. Everything was being created once again. Everything was being made new. Then the white bull, which had become a man, came out of the ship, and with him the three bulls, one of which was white and resembled that bull. Another was red like blood, and the other black. And the white bull left them. Then they began to beget wild beasts and birds. So that's when, before the separation of the languages, the nations were being prepared in a way. So that's why so many beasts, wild beasts and birds. They started to have all kinds of children in the different levels of righteousness, still wickedness. There were multitudes of each species: lions, leopards, dogs, wolves, hyenas, wild pigs, foxes, squirrels, boars, falcons, vultures, falcons. So I guess another type of falcon. The eagles, the ravens. Then in the midst of them was born another white bull, which would be Abraham. So we see how the white bull represents a king of creation who is obedient and who is pure, set apart. So in the midst of all of those different types of animals, another white bull appeared, that being Abraham. And they began to bite each other. The white bull that had been born in the midst of them begot a wild ass. This is obviously Ishmael. As you see here, Ishmael, as we know in Genesis 16:12, he's called a wild ass. So we see a clear connection between Genesis and the book of Hanoch. The prophecy given to Hagar, Ishmael's mother, about him referred to him as a wild ass. But also a white yearling calf, that being Yitzhak, another white bull, pretty much. The wild ass multiplied itself. Then the white yearling calf, which was begotten by the white bull, procreated a black boar and a white ram. This is important. Procreated a black boar and a white ram. Look how Esau is pretty much a pig. That's why pigs are seen as impure in the Torah. And that's why Yahweh hated Esau, because he appeared to Yitzhak as set apart. He would ask him things about scriptures. He would ask him things about tithes and all of that, sacrifices, so that Yitzhak would think that he was set apart, that he was actually looking for the Almighty Creator, but he was just lying because he was doing the opposite in every way. So Esau like a boar, which is a type of pig, and Yaakov as a white ram. So there it changes a bit from bull to ram. He also has horns, therefore also represents a crown. And from the ram, one gets the shofar. So that's also another connection with Yaakov as the one who would blow the shofar, since Yaakov represents also the last, who brings the last trumpet. Then, and also a ram is pretty much a male sheep. So that's pretty much starting with the congregation, because from him, the 12 tribes would come. And he would be the head, the king of the tribes, pretty much by being the father of them. The boar procreated many swine, and the ram procreated 12 sheep. So the 12 tribes. And the sheep, because that represents the congregation, for the good shepherd to come and gather them and bring them to Yahweh. And another example of obedience as well, meekness. When these 12 sheep had grown up, they delivered one sheep from among them. That would be Yosef. We see here how perfect this vision is, how exact to what we see happen in Genesis. When these 12 sheep had grown up, they delivered one sheep from among them to the wild asses, to Yishmaelim, who bought him, who bought Yosef. And those asses in turn delivered that sheep to the wolves, those wolves being the Mizraim, the Egyptians. And those asses in turn delivered that sheep to the wolves, to Mizraim, to Egypt. And the sheep grew up among the wolves. This is interesting because remember that Yosef, when he was sold by Yehuda, that happened to represent how Judas, whose name was actually Yehuda, sold Yahushua. So the first half of Yosef's life is connected to the first manifestation of Yahweh on this earth. After he is sold as a slave, from that moment on, he represents the last, who comes as a prodigal son. So the fact that it says the sheep grew up among the wolves represents how the last grows up among the wolves, meaning false teachers, false teachings, doctrines, religions, etc. And the sheep grew up among the wolves. Then the ram, Yaakov, brought all the 11 other sheep to dwell and graze with him among the wolves. And they multiplied, and they became a flock of numerous sheep, and there was abundance of pasture for them in Egypt, when Yaakov brought his children to Egypt, when there were the 7 years of famine. But the wolves began to oppress the flock, even making their young perish. As we know, they started slaving the people of Israel and would even kill the male children. And that's how Moshe came to the scene. And casting their young in a current of water, that being the river, the Nile River. Then the sheep began to cry out for their young and to lament before their sovereign. One sheep, that being Moshe, which is important because we see in Isaiah 53, when Yahweh speaks about the death of Mashiach, first and last, he refers to the first as a lamb and refers to the last as a sheep. The last is the witness like Moshe, who's being called here a sheep. So one sheep which had escaped from the wolves fled and went away to the wild asses. As we know from the book of Yashar, he went to Cush. And then it says, I saw while the flock complained and cried terribly. until the sovereign of the flock descended and the voice of the sheep. Until the sovereign of the flock descended at the voice of the sheep. From his lofty habitation, he came to their side and made them graze. He called to that sheep that had escaped from the wolves and told him about the wolves. So she would make them understand that they were not to touch the sheep anymore. Then that sheep went to the wolves by the command of Yahweh, and another sheep met with her and went with her. So Moshe and Aharon. They went and both of them entered together into the assembly of the wolves when they entered the Egyptian palace. By the command of Yahweh, talked to them and made them understand that thenceforward they were not to touch the sheep. From then on, I observed that the wolves oppressed the sheep with more duress and with all of their forces, and the sheep cried out loudly. And their sovereign came beside the sheep, and he began to strike those wolves, and the wolves started lamenting. This being the 10 plagues. After Yahweh told Moshe, go and tell Pharaoh to leave them alone and to free them, he became worse. And then this happened, and he began to strike those wolves. So Yahweh started to send the plagues. And the wolves started lamenting. However, the sheep became calm. And from that time, they stopped crying out. Israel. I saw the sheep when they departed from among the wolves, and the eyes of the wolves were dimmed, and those wolves went forth pursuing the sheep with all their forces. But the sovereign of the sheep went with them, guiding them. All his sheep followed him, and his countenance was radiant, awesome, and terrifying to the sight. The wolves began to pursue these sheep until they overtook them near a certain pond of water, that being the Sea of Reeds, what they call the Red Sea. But that lake became divided, and the water stood up on either side before his face. And Yahweh guided them, and he placed himself between them and the wolves. This is interesting because it says, and Yahweh guided them, and he placed himself between them and the wolves. So he was in the front and the back at the same time, representing the first and the last. Once again, remember that the back is connected to the word Aharon, which means last, because it's the last part of the body. So, and Yahweh guided them, and he placed himself between them and the wolves. As those wolves did not see the sheep anymore, they went into the middle of the pond, and the wolves pursued the sheep, and these wolves ran after them into the pool of water. And when they saw the sovereign of the sheep, they turned to flee from before his face. Then the water of the pool closed and returned suddenly to its natural position, and it filled with water. I continued watching until all the wolves that went pursuing this flock perished, submerged and drowned, and the waters covered them. The flock left from these waters and went to a desolate place, the desert, in which there is neither water nor grass, and their eyes were open, and they saw. When they received the Torah, pretty much. Then I watched until the sovereign of the flock let them graze, gave them water and grass, water through the rock and the manna. And the sheep went and guided them. The sheep ascended to the top of a lofty rock, and the sovereign of the flock sent her to the middle of the flock, and all of them kept their distance. That's when he was about to give the Torah, the commandments. Then I looked, and behold, their sovereign stood up before the flock, and his appearance was powerful, magnificent, and terrifying. And all of the flock saw him and were afraid of him. All of them were frightened and trembled before him, so they cried out to the lamb that was his second. So now it's talking about Aharon being called here a lamb, which is interesting because he is the high priest, and Yahushua the lamb came as the high priest. All of them were frightened and trembled before him, so they cried out to the lamb that was his second, and to the other sheep who had been with him, and who were in the midst of them. We're not able to stand before Yahweh or to look upon him. Oh, well, my bad, because even though what I mentioned is true, I guess here, the fact that it says all of them, because of the capital letter, all of them were frightened and trembled before him, meaning before Yahweh. So they cried out to the lamb. In this case, we'll be talking about Moshe. That was his second, meaning the one representing Yahweh on this earth. And to the other sheep who had been with him and who were in the midst of them. And in that sense, connecting Moshe to the lamb as the one who would have to die in order for them to enter the promised land eventually. So they said, we are not able to stand before Yahweh or to look upon him. That is what we see, well, in the Exodus, and also mentioned in Deuteronomy 18:15, when Yahweh speaks about raising up a prophet like Moshe from the midst of the people, that being one of the two witnesses. So we're not able to stand before Yahweh or to look upon him. Then that lamb that guided them went back and ascended a second time to the top of the rock. But the flock began to grow blind and to depart from the way that he had indicated to them without the lamb knowing such things. So first he went up in the time when Yahweh spoke the commandments. Then he went up to receive the Torah. But while he was getting the Torah from Yahweh, the people began to grow blind, pretty much when they wanted a idol, a golden calf. But the flock began to grow blind and to depart from the way that he had indicated to them without the lamb knowing such things. The sovereign of the flock was greatly enraged against the flock. The lamb knew it and descended from the top of the rock and came to the flock and found the majority had become blind and had wandered off of his way. Like I mentioned, when Yahushua went up, he left to the disciples the true way to the Father, being Yahushua himself, of course, but I mean through the doctrine. But through the apostasy, they wandered off of his way. So when they saw him, they began to be afraid at his face and became desirous of returning to their fold. Then the lamb took with him other sheep, meaning the Levites, and went to the flock that had wandered and slaughtered all of them. And they started to tremble at his countenance. That's when 3,000 of them died. Then this lamb made all the flock that had wandered to return to their fold. I continued watching this dream until this lamb was transformed into a man. Once again, we see the growth spiritually represented by an animal becoming a man. Just like we also see in the book of Daniel, when Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babel, is represented by an animal who becomes a man, because Nebuchadnezzar ended up believing in the Almighty Creator, Yahweh. So I continued watching this dream until the lamb was transformed into a man, built an encampment, which was the Mishkan, the tabernacle, for the sovereign of the flock, and took all this flock to this encampment. I kept watching until the sheep that had joined the lamb that directed the sheep fell asleep. I observed until all the elder sheep had perished, and smaller ones rose up in their place, and they entered into a pasture, and they approached a river of water, the Yarden, at the end of the 40 years, when even Aharon had died already, and the rest of the generation of those who rebelled against Yahweh because of the testimony of the 10 spies. Verse 62. Then the sheep that guided them and who had converted into a man was separated from them, fell asleep. And all the sheep searched for her, Remember that it is written that Yahweh buried him through Michael when he fought for his body with Satan. And Yahweh sent Michael to bury him so that nobody on earth would know where he was buried. The only thing we know is that it was in the mount called Nebo. But that is a whole mountain somewhere in there. Michael buried him. So then the sheep guided them. Then the sheep that guided them and who had converted into a man was separated from them, fell asleep, and all the sheep searched for her and cried for her with great lamentation. I looked until they finished weeping for that sheep. Then they passed through the river of water into the promised land, and that there arose other sheep that guided them. That would be the judges, in the stead of those who had guided them, who fell asleep after having guided them. So the time of the judges, when Yahweh will raise certain men and a female Deborah to guide the people, to bring judgment upon their enemies, pretty much. I looked at the sheep until they enter into a beautiful region, into a pleasant and splendid land, the promised land. I saw those sheep until they became satiated, and that encampment was in the midst of them in that pleasant land. As soon as they opened their eyes, they went blind until another sheep, which would be Shemuel the prophet, arose and guided them and led all of them, and their eyes were open. So it shows how they would go blind and then would see, and then they would go blind, pretty much representing their sin, until Yahweh sent a prophet who would guide them and give them light, meaning sight. And their eyes were open. The dogs, the foxes, and the wild boars began to devour these sheep until the sovereign of the sheep raised a ram, which would be Shaul, the first king of Israel, if we don't count Moshe as king, from their midst to guide them. The sovereign of the sheep raised a ram from their midst to guide them. This ram started butting on one side, then another at those dogs, foxes, and wild boars until he made them all perish. So when other nations started to destroy Israel, Yahweh raised up a king so that through an army he would go and destroy those enemies. But that sheep, whose eyes were open, saw that the ram that was in the midst of the sheep was being abandoned by his honor. So Shemuel saw that Yahweh was distancing himself from Shaul. But that sheep whose eyes were open, Shemuel, saw that the ram, Shaul, that was in the midst of the sheep, Israel, was being abandoned by his honor. And he began to butt the sheep, tread upon them, and to behave himself in an inappropriate way. Then the sovereign of the sheep dispatched the lamb to another lamb. So he sent Shemuel to David, a lamb to another lamb. Obviously, every lamb connects with Mashiach. Then the sovereign of the sheep dispatched the lamb to another lamb and raised him up to become a ram. That's important. That shows that being a ram represents being a king, because he raised David to become a king. And we know that the first time that a ram appeared was when Jacob was born. So that shows how Jacob represents the last, who comes as the king, as the Melech Gadol. Now we see David becoming a ram because he becomes a king, just like the last is the branch of David because he comes as the Melech Gadol, the great king. So then the sovereign of the sheep dispatched the lamb to another lamb and raised him up to become a ram and to lead them instead of the ram who had been abandoned by his honor. So to replace Shaul with David, just like the Halel will be replaced with Michael, because Lucifer lost his honor. So that's why he will be replaced. So verse 72, when Then it says, he went therefore beside him and talked with him in secret, and he ascended him to Ram, made him a judge, a pastor of the sheep. But during all these events, the dogs oppressed the sheep, which would be the Philistine. The first ram pursued the second. The first ram pursued the second, meaning Shaul pursued David, as we see also in scriptures. And this second left and fled from his presence, but I looked until those dogs knocked down that first ram. And the Philistines killed Shaul. Afterwards, that second ram arose and guided the sheep and procreated numerous sheep and later fell asleep. A smaller sheep, Shlomo, became a ram, the king, and was the judge and the leader in his place. Those sheep grew and multiplied, and all those dogs, foxes, and boars feared and fled far away. The ram also butted and killed all the wild beasts, and those beasts could not again prevail in the midst of the sheep, nor at any time ever snatch them away. That's why his name was Shlomo, because during his reign there was Shalom. And that house, meaning Bethel, the house of the mighty one, became large and wide and lofty, and great tower was built by the sheep. It was built upon the house for the sovereign of the sheep. The encampment, the Mishkan, had been low, but the tower very high, meaning exalted, showing the contrast between the tent of the tabernacle and the temple. And the sovereign of the sheep stayed upon it, and they offered a full table before him. The Shulchan. Afterwards, I saw those sheep err again and go by various ways and abandon their house, the house of the mighty one. The sovereign of the sheep called from among them to some. The sovereign of the sheep called from among them to some, and he sent them alongside them. Pretty much the prophets, the predicators. But the sheep began to kill these, but one of them was saved and was not killed. That would be Eliyahu when he was taken up. She leaped and cried out against the sheep that were desirous of killing her. But the sovereign of the sheep delivered her from the hands of the sheep, made her ascend and to dwell near me. So that means that when Eliyahu was taken up, he was taken to be next to Hanoch. So they were taken to the same place, paradise. Why does it refer to Moshe and Aharon as female sheep? Well, mainly because of the term sheep, because how the term sheep is taken, then that's why it would use that article for it in female. But also it has to do with, you know, how what we were talking about, the head and the body, male and female. So it would be like those that came first, as the head is first, were mentioned as males. And since Moshe and Aharon came afterwards, and therefore in a worse generation than the one in the beginning, mainly because, as we know, the more time goes by, the worse it gets. So that would be a separation between male and female in the sense of, you know how the females have, well, they're not physically as strong as males, even though they're saying everything else different nowadays. That is exactly the same, which is not reality. So males are physically stronger. So that would represent the spiritual strength of the male bull, for instance. Well, the bull as a male, while the sheep as female. And like I also said, being from the congregation, and the congregation represented by a female. So it has to do with the spiritual strength that in a way started to grow or pretty much diminish with time. and also with the obedience represented by the sheep, as well as I mentioned the congregation as the sheep of the Father. Do you think Moshe read the book of Hanoch before he met Yahweh? I don't know, but that would have been amazing. I cannot imagine how amazing it would have been for him to read about himself in the book. But I would think that if he did it afterwards, because then he would have a lot of information regarding what was going to happen. And I think confirmation for him not to not doubt, but kind of, you know how when Yahweh chose him, he said, why would you send me? I cannot speak this and that. In a way, if he would have read it, it would have helped him to confirm that he was the one. Although, obviously, because of the way it's being explained, he could have thought that he wasn't that sheep mentioned there, and that sheep should have been somebody greater than him because of his humility, of course, since he was the most humble man in history before Mashiach. So, let me see other questions. That's right, Noach. It connects with our time once again. So almost exactly like it will be in the second Exodus. That's right. All right. So I'll continue. Blessings, soldier. Good to see you, brother. I'll continue with verse 88. He sent still many other sheep to these sheep to testify to them and to lament over them. Look how in this, there's a parenthesis in this translation that says including his son. And the translator did this because, amazingly enough, and what I believe is part of what is the idea of this dream, the coming of Mashiach is hidden. So that would be one of the reasons that even if they had the book of Hanoch, they were not able to see the coming of Mashiach as clear, because in this clear vision, it doesn't appear, it is not mentioned like in a clear way like the other events. And remember that the demons, the demons and the evil spirits that Yahushua would take out from people, there were certain times in which when Yahushua appeared before these possessed people, the demon within them, the evil spirits within them would say, why are you here at this time? As in, we were not expecting you so early, because they knew, and we could say even because of the book of Hanoch, who was the one who condemned, or Yahweh used to condemn the angels and the evil spirits that came from the giants. Therefore, the evil spirits would have an idea of when Mashiach had to appear to condemn them. But since Mashiach the first appeared 2,000 years before that time, the demons and evil spirits were surprised and confused when they saw Mashiach before them, and they said, but why are you here? This is not the time. And well, I will look for a verse mentioning that. Just a second. So in Matthew 8:29, but I'll read from 28. It says, and when he came to the other side, to the country of the Girgashites, 2 demon-possessed ones met him, coming out of the tombs, very fierce, so that no one was able to pass that way. Now that I see this fierce word, it reminds me of the name of the demon possessing Beyonce, called Sasha Fierce. She herself has said in several interviews that there is something that takes control of her and sings better than she could ever sing. And that when she looks at herself in a concert, she sometimes is even a bit ashamed, in the sense of what she looks at Sasha Fierce doing in a concert are things that she wouldn't do, or that she aren't, well, it's even she's not able to, like in the sense of the singing. She claims she's not able to sing as well as Sasha Fierce when she takes over her body. She even claims that before every concert, she raises her hands and prepares for the spirit to take over her. Um, so yeah, that is interesting, and obviously she's not the only one. Like most of them are uh, in the same position. So then it says, so that no one was able to pass that way. And see, they cried out, saying, "What have we to do with you, Yahushua, son of Elohim? Have you come here to torture us before the appointed time?" So they were surprised, like, "Are you here to torture us before the time in which it was said that we should be tortured?" So they were not expecting Mashiach 2,000 years ago, because in a sense, his coming was hidden, even though he was prophesied. Since the Ruach HaKodesh had not been given, those prophecies were not truly understood by the people, only by the prophets, and not even all the time. Many times they had to ask for the interpretation, and sometimes even when they were told the interpretation, they didn't understand what it meant, because they were so far back in time, in the sense of they were in the beginning of history, and there were so many things that had to be fulfilled for those prophecies to be understood. So they said, "Have you come here to torture us before the appointed time?" So going back to Hanoch, like I said, it's interesting that the vision goes through that important and specific time of the coming of Mashiach through this verse. He sent still more, many other sheep, meaning like the prophets, including his son, to these sheep to testify to them and to lament over them. Afterwards, I saw them abandon the house of their sovereign and his tower, erring in everything, and their eyes were closed. I saw that the sovereign of the sheep made I saw that the sovereign of the sheep made a great earth. I'm sorry. For some reason, I was expecting the word earthquake. I saw that the sovereign of the sheep made a great slaughter with them, until this sheep provoked the slaughter and betrayed his post. So the sovereign of the sheep make a great slaughter with them, until this sheep provoked the slaughter and betrayed his post. He abandoned them in the power of the lions and the tigers, of the wolves and the hyenas, of the foxes and of all the wild beasts. The different empires that had control over the Israelites, Ashur, Babel, Greece, eventually Rome, which began to tear the sheep in pieces. I saw them forsake his house and his tower and turn them over to the lions, which would be Rome, for them to break them in pieces and devour them. Like we see similar words in the book of Daniel regarding those four beasts that would destroy Israel in different times in history. I began to cry out with all my might and to call the sovereign of the sheep, and made him see that the sheep were being devoured by all the wild beasts. I began to cry out with all my might and to call the sovereign of the sheep, and made him see that the sheep were being devoured by all the wild beasts. But he remained mute, just like in Yeshayahu 53:7. And when he saw them, he was gladdened to see that they were devoured, swallowed up, and carried off, and abandoned them to become pasture for the beasts. Because of the wicked ways, Yahweh allowed it, as we see in Micah 3:1-5. He summoned 70 pastors. He summoned 70 pastors and delegated these sheep to them so they would take them to graze. So he summoned 70 pastors, as we see in Luke 10:1-16. Yahushua himself called 70 men and sent them 2 by 2 to preach the good news, to represent the fact that the good news would reach all the nations, which in the beginning were 70. So the root of all the nations is the number 70, and that's why he summoned 70 pastors to send them to preach to all the nations eventually. And delegated these sheep to them so they would take them to grace, meaning to eat the doctrine, the true doctrine of the way of Yahweh, Yahushua. So it's interesting that he says he summoned 70 pastors. And as we know, Yahushua was the one who did it on earth. So that shows that Yahushua was the first manifestation of he who is in the heavens, Yahweh, referred to here as he. And he said to the pastors and to their accomplices, let each one of you henceforward take the sheep to graze, and whatsoever I command you, do. I will deliver them to you duly counted, and I will tell you which must be destroyed, and these make them perish. And he delivered those sheep to them. Then he called to another and said, here's a comment that says, Eliyahu, being mortal man and one of the persecuted sheep, he is uniquely qualified to make record of Christian excesses and slaughter as a third-party witness. Well, this is what he is, the translator of this book, this translation, is interpreting from this verse. I'll continue reading to see what it says, and then we'll see if that is the case. So then he called to another and said, observe and register everything that the pastor do to the sheep, since they destroy more than those which I have commanded. Well, according to other parts of scripture, does seem to point to Eliyahu and Hanoch being two witnesses in paradise, writing down the deeds of humans in order for them to be condemned or justified through them during judgment day, as we see also in Revelation 20. Observe and register everything that the pastors do to these sheep, since they destroy more than those which I have commanded, as we see in Zechariah 11 and Yechezkel 34, 1-10. Every excess and slaying that shall be committed by the pastors, register it, how many they destroy in accordance with my command, and how in accordance with their own whim. Put on the account of each pastor the destruction that he inflicts. This is important because it shows how during the last 2,000 years, because of the apostasy, the deeds, the teachings of the pastors would be recorded so that they could be judged later on. Put on the account of each pastor the destruction that he inflicts. Later, read the result before me, how many they have destroyed and how many I delivered to them for destruction, so that this may be a testimony against them to know every action of the pastors, that I may evaluate them and that they may see what they do and if they hold or not to what I have commanded them. Look how it also says how many I delivered to them for destruction. So because of the deeds of the people, Yahweh also leads them to destruction by letting them remain in false doctrines, because that is what they are seeking. They are not seeking the truth. They are not seeking the Almighty. They want money. They want success in this reality, in this world. They're not thinking about the kingdom of Yahweh. So how many they have destroyed through their teachings and other ways, and how many I delivered to them for destruction. So verse 100, however, they must not learn of this. You must not tell it to them, nor should you warn them. Instead, only annotate every destruction which the pastors commit one by one and at the moment, and exhibit all this before me. I saw when those pastors pastured in his time, when they began to kill. I saw when those pastors pastured in his time, then they began to kill and destroy more sheep than they were offered. And they delivered this sheep to the hands of the lions, meaning when they started to give the believers to the Romans. The lions and the tigers devoured a great part of this sheep, and the boars, as we saw, the boars, the pigs, were Esau. And as we know, Esau, part of it became Rome and part of it became Jewish. And nowadays, most of the people who claim to be Jewish are actually descendants of Esau. So the lions and the tigers devoured a great part of the sheep, and the boars ate beside them. They burned that tower and demolished that house. So that was in the year 70. This is the second time that they destroyed the house. We had another time mentioned earlier in this chapter when it said that they left the house to Babel. Verse 92, I saw them forsake his house and his tower and turn them over to the lions. And Babel was mentioned earlier in that verse right here. So that would have been the first destruction. Then we have the second destruction of the temple in the year 70 by Titus. I was extremely grieved for that tower because the house of the sheep was demolished. And then I could not see whether those sheep entered into that house. The pastors and their accomplices delivered those sheep to all the wild beasts. So that's when Israel was scattered throughout the whole earth, all the nations, that they might devour them. But each of them had received a determined number, and it was written for each one of them by the other one in a scroll, how many of them they had destroyed by the other one, meaning Hanoch, and the other one, in this case, Eliyahu, just like they represent the two witnesses. Each pastor killed and destroyed more than were prescribed. And I began to weep and lament on account of this sheep. Then in the vision, I observed the one who wrote, how he wrote down each one that was destroyed by the pastors day after day, and he carried in and exhibited all of his scroll and showed the sovereign of the sheep all that which they truly had done, and all those they had delivered up to destruction. And the scroll was read before the sovereign of the sheep, and he took the scroll in his hand, read it, sealed it, and archived it. So he is keeping it for judgment day, as we see in Revelation 20. After this, I saw that the pastors were taking them to pasture for 12 hours. According to the translator calculations, from 1524 to 2024. Now, okay. The person who made this translation has a calendar with which I don't agree. But when it comes to the year, because he adds a year to the calendar, as you know, I haven't done that to a calendar because I am waiting for certain things to happen in order to place that year with all confidence. But in this case, he made a calendar years ago. I remember seeing it years ago, in which he already gave a date for pretty much every event. Last time I saw the calendar, it was already failing some things, as he was expecting certain things to happen, which still have not happened. So that kind of brings his calendar a bit down. I mean, doesn't give that much credibility to it because of things that he said would happen have not happened in the years that he mentioned. But when it comes to how close we are to the end and the years that he gives in his calendar, it is close in the sense of how close we are to everything happening. So pretty much he's saying that after this, I saw the pastors were taking them to pasture for 12 hours. Those 12 hours representing pretty much 500 years. 500 years. So that would mean that a day, because, well, that is important. As we know, Yahweh, He's in eternity, so time doesn't pass there. But when it comes to the heaven below him, which is that of the angels, one day there lasts 1,000 years here. So 1,000 years go here, and up there 1 day in the second heaven. Because the Yahweh 1 day is like 1,000 years to humans. So if a day is 24 hours, then 12 hours is 500 years. Interestingly enough, Israel, a part of it, a great part of it, that was in Spain, was kicked out of it and brought to America, where other Israelites were before. So they started mixing, and that's how many of us came to this reality. Plus, certain other Yahudim who were in Africa were brought also to America later on. First, it happened in 1492 when the Sephardim were brought to this continent. And then almost 100 years later, those who were in Africa were brought to the United States as slaves and other parts, islands and stuff like that. So the last 500 years would be the time in which Yahweh would fulfill what he promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob regarding the 400 years in slavery until the Exodus, until giving us the promise. So 12 hours would be 500 years. And if this is going to take us to the end of time, then it fits, of course. But not necessarily 2024. It could be 2020, 21, 22, right? Around that decade. That's the point. So after this, I saw the pastors were taking them to pasture for 12 hours. Okay, here's a comment. Since a day for Yahweh is 1,000 years, this 12-hour period when Christians had access to scriptures and respite from Catholic genocide against the sheep in 500 years before the resuming of their slaughter on a war scale called the Great Tribulation, which is a good point. Catholics, well, the Catholic religion pretty much was the one who established the apostasy throughout the whole world. So when the Protestants appeared, they were supposed to go against that apostasy and bring the true doctrine, but they continued with certain falsehood within the doctrine and then added some other one. So during those 500 years, those 12 hours, in a way, believers were supposed to be able to find the truth by being able to read scriptures and everything else. So everything else that has to do with looking or seeking the kingdom of Yahweh. So because of those 12 hours of them remaining in the apostasy, something will happen next, which pretty much is the Great Tribulation, when in 30 days the many will die because of the apostasy, which they don't reject even after hearing the two witnesses teach the true doctrine. But because of the blindness, they're not able to see the light within the teaching of the two witnesses. So then it says in verses 116 and 118, okay, so that's where we're going to see the Great Tribulation. Therefore, he would extend from, he says the years exactly, 1524, the year 1524 was the turning point in the Protestant Reformation, which I just mentioned. When Martin Luther was out of danger from the papists, and when his scriptures were written to become available to the sheep. So that's why he gives the year 1524, because that's when the Protestant Reformation happened. And 500 exact years would take us to 2024. But remember, like I have said, the same book of Hanoch tells us that the year is 364. Those 500 years that he's counting, taking us to 2024, are years of 365 days, the Gregorian calendar. So that's why I said it could be before that. If we take years of 364, it would be before that for sure. And in 500 years, just to say, it will be pretty much, well, not much, not it wouldn't take us that much back, but yeah, a little bit. But even if we take the Gregorian calendar, that shows how close we are to the very end, because we're already 2021, about to end it even. So then it says, after this, I saw the pastors were taking them to pasture for 12 hours. And look, 3 of these sheep returned, arrived, entered, and began building all that had been demolished of that house. 3 of the sheep, and it says here, the Yehudim, racial Yehuda, but like I have mentioned, the Yehudim of nowadays, not all are Israelites. Many of them are children of Esau, and also the Chazars, which are not even family of Jacob like Esau was. But anyways, it says the Jewish people, well, meaning he means the 3 tribes that made the tribes of the south, where the temple was built. So he's talking about those who returned in the 1880s, but did not succeed at establishing a country. And then the return of the Yehudim to the land of Israel in 1947. That has to do with the other comment that he's about to put here. So 3 of these sheep returned, arrived, entered, and began building all that had been demolished of that house. So 3 of these sheep would be 3 tribes, in this case, Yehuda, Benjamin, and Levites. Then it says, but the wild boars hindered them, and they did not prevail. As we know, they were stopped, like we just mentioned right here. They did not succeed establishing the country. And they did not prevail. Afterwards, they began to build again as before, and raised up that tower, which was called a lofty tower. And they began again to place a table before the tower, but all the bread that they had was contaminated and impure. So that would mean that they get to build a temple, but the presence of Yahweh will not be in that temple. So that's why the teaching will be contaminated and impure. Their acts, their sacrifices, everything that they will do in that temple, since the presence of the true mighty one is not there, for they remain in the letter, and therefore did not understand the spirit of what the scripture was telling us. So they rejected Mashiach, they still in the letter, so they will make still a temple of stone instead of accepting Mashiach as the temple. And they began again to place a table before the tower, but all the bread that they had was contaminated and impure, as we see in Malachi 1:6-14. Also in Yechezkel 44:6-8. Concerning all this, the eyes of the sheep were blinded and did not see, and the pastors likewise did not. So he delivered them up for a greater destruction to their pastors, who trod the sheep under foot and devoured them. The great persecution, the great tribulation. The sovereign of the sheep kept himself indifferent until all the sheep were dispersed throughout the field, and they mixed with them, and they did not save them from the hands of the beasts. As we know, the 2 beasts will be the ones creating, or making the great tribulation happen. So the sovereign of the sheep kept himself indifferent until all the sheep were dispersed throughout the field, and they mixed with them, and they did not save them from the hands of the beasts. So here they put the Yehudim mixing with the Christians, which is obviously a possible interpretation for it. but also Israel mixing with the nations in general. And the Christians are from the nation, so it fits. And they did not save them from the hands of the beasts. He who had written the scroll brought it and showed it and read it before the sovereign of the sheep. He implored and supplicated on behalf of them and showed him every act of the pastors and gave testimony before him against the pastors. Then taking the scroll, he deposited it with him and departed. That's how that chapter ends. So if we include the Great Tribulation right there, where we saw that it fit, we can see how the first and last would be pretty much hidden within the dream, the vision, because we are already at the very end of history and the vision, I mean, well, and in time as well. And that shows how Yahweh started focusing on the judgment that would come on the sheep, children of the ram, Yaakov, for departing from the truth, for departing from the commandments of Yahweh. So that's how that chapter ends.